We're here with Nathaniel Gabriel. He's a graduate of Western Kinesiology in 2018. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nathan.
From what I've heard from various people, lifting weights can actually cause harm to your joints later in life. Is there any truth to this?
It all comes down to what activity specifically you're doing. There are no exercises that are inherently bad for people. It's just performing the exercises either incorrectly or at a volume and load, and by volume I mean the total number of sets and repetitions that you do. If these things are not managed correctly, then you can have some issues down the line, or even currently with knees, hips, elbows, and shoulders primarily.
As people age, should they be focusing on the same types of exercise, or is their focus shifting to lighter weight and more focus on flexibility?
I wouldn't say that the area of focus that they need to spend most of their time on changes. I just think that the demands that they need to put on their body are a little bit different. Like when you're younger, you try and focus more on developing a nice physique, or you focus on performance if you're an athlete. But as you start to get older, that kind of falls behind, and you more so focus on being able to do things like get in and out of your car unassisted, being able to carry all your groceries in on your own, things of that nature. I wouldn't say that demands are changing by kind, I would say that they are changing by degree.
Is there any specific ailments that exercise as you age can prevent?
In terms of disease prevention, there's a few that kind of stand out in particular to me. Type 2 diabetes, which is rampant among North Americans, especially in the United States. Basically with resistance training and aerobic training, you're able to train your body to be able to handle the sugars and other foods that you eat more effectively and lower your risk of type 2 diabetes. Another one that it really aids, especially the resistance training, is things like sarcopenia and osteopenia, which are the age-related losses to both muscle mass and bone. If you continue to be active and you continue to resistance train, you can preserve that mass and maintain your functional independence.
How would you recommend that an individual would start resistance training?
Being educated is the most important thing. And so you could study yourself, sifting through many different articles about what's good and what's bad. But the primary step that I would take is to find a good coach. Find someone who's done all the work for you, who will understand your needs, your limitations, as you may have some as an older adult, and will be able to point you in the right direction as to how often you should be able to perform resistance training, what exercises you should be doing, what you should not be doing, in order to keep making progress and stay injury-free.
Would you say that a lack of strength or a lack of mobility is the biggest hindrance to people as they age?
The decrease in their physical capacity comes from their lack of strength.
With the first interview complete, I left the YMCA and headed to Empower Conditioning, a private personal training practice located in downtown London. Here, I interviewed Kari Schneider, a master's graduate in kinesiology and certified strength and conditioning specialist. How should aging people exercise to retain function?
If somebody's starting to lose function and they're, say, 50, 60, 70 up, getting back into functional exercises, so things that move multiple joints, not just one joint, similar to what they want to do. If they want to garden or they want to ride bikes or they want to do those things, then they've got to be moving those joints in that manner.
Would you say resistance training or cardio is more important for those people?
Which one is the priority? That depends on the individual. So if somebody's got a history of cardiovascular disease, or they have that in their family, or they're on that route, then that might be the priority at that time. If someone's really frail and really light, then strength training might be the priority at that time. Is strength or mobility more of a problem?
Yeah.
Strength ends up being a big issue. But then if they start trying to move and they have no mobility, then something's going to get hurt. They really have to go hand in hand. If they've got someone to help them and they have a good program, when they do their strength work, it's going to start to improve their mobility just by doing that alone, and then adding some extra mobility work on top of that will be really beneficial.
Is there any specific micronutrients or macronutrients that people should be focusing more on as they age?
We're getting more and more deficient as a whole population, aside from an aging population, so typically they need a good multi. So everybody needs a good multi, because unlike 30 years ago when we figured we could get all our nutrients from our food, right now we have food that's less nutrient dense overall, just speed in growing, loss of topsoil, lots of reasons. So people need a really good multivitamin Typically, if you're in the northern hemisphere, we all need vitamin D as an extra as well. We typically need some omega-3 fatty acids because most of what we eat is higher in omega-6 fatty acids, so we need to balance that out a little bit. But other than that, that's a really an individual thing. Those would be the general things that almost all people need.
What multivitamin do you take?
There's 2 brands that I trust implicitly, and one is doTERRA's multivitamin, and the second one is Thorne.
Minerals like calcium and phosphorus, which are the building blocks of our bone, can be very important in older adults that experience some osteoporosis or osteopenia like we said earlier.
To conclude, it is important that as people age, they train through both resistance training and cardiovascular training. Both of these types of training have their own benefits, and attempting to participate in at least one of these types of training every day will ensure both health and longevity. Further, eating a balanced diet, supplementing with a multivitamin, vitamin D, calcium, and phosphorus where necessary, will ensure that the individuals maintain their functional independence.